There is a very subtle moment in every conversation, a moment that almost no one talks about. The moment when you finish speaking and the room goes quiet. You've said your point, you've answered the question, and then silence. For most people, that silence feels unbearable, so they rush to fill it. They add one more sentence, then another example, then a clarification no one asked for. They start explaining what was already clear, and in that exact moment, something shifts. The authority they had begins to thin out. The weight of their words becomes lighter, not because what they said was wrong, but because they revealed discomfort. We've been taught that speaking more shows confidence, that detailed explanations prove competence, that adding value means adding volume. But the ancient Stoics saw something deeper. As Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius remind us, we were given 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, not because silence is a manipulation tactic, but because restraint reflects inner order. Over-explaining is often anxiety in disguise. It's the quiet fear of not being enough. The fear that if we stop speaking, we'll lose approval. Controlled silence, on the other hand, signals stability. It says, I trust what I've said. In Stoicism, power is not about controlling the room. It's about controlling your reaction to it. And silence becomes the test. In this video, we'll explore why talking too much quietly weakens your presence, the Stoic psychology behind calm pauses, and how to train disciplined silence without becoming cold or distant. Don't skip this, because sometimes the difference between weakness and strength is 5 seconds. To understand why over-talking signals weakness, we have to look beneath the surface. Speaking more is not the problem. Passion is not the problem. Even enthusiasm is not the problem. The real issue is compulsion. When you speak beyond what is necessary, not because it serves clarity, but because you cannot tolerate the space, you reveal something subtle. You are regulating your anxiety through words. Weakness, in the Stoic sense, is not about volume. It is about lack of inner governance. It is about reacting instead of choosing. And over-talking is often a reaction. The first sign is the urge to fill the gap. You finish answering. The other person pauses. Maybe they're thinking, maybe they're evaluating, maybe they're simply breathing, but your mind interprets the silence as danger. You add another sentence, then another. This is not communication anymore. It is self-protection. As Epictetus taught, it is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Silence is neutral. Your interpretation makes it threatening. And when you rush to erase that threat, you show that you cannot sit with uncertainty. Authority requires that capacity. The second sign is over-explaining simple answers. Someone asks, "Can you handle this?" A complete answer would be, yes. But insecurity stretches it into a paragraph. You list credentials. You anticipate objections. You defend against doubts that haven't even been voiced. The subtext becomes clear. You are trying to secure belief rather than embody it. Strong presence trusts brevity. Weak presence tries to manufacture certainty through excess detail. The irony is that the more you justify, the more you imply there is something to justify. The third sign is seeking approval disguised as helpfulness. Does that make sense? Would you like more examples? Is that okay? These questions are not always wrong, but when they arise from fear, they signal dependency. In Stoicism, dependence on external validation is a form of bondage. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that his peace could not hinge on how others received him. When you repeatedly check for reassurance, you quietly hand over your emotional balance to someone else's reaction. The fourth sign is speaking to manage perception. You monitor faces, micro-expressions, body language, and adjust mid-sentence. You add charm. You soften tone. You explain more. This hypervigilance reveals that your focus is outside yourself. Stoic discipline teaches the opposite direction of control. Govern your own judgments, not the room. When your speech becomes a tool to control how you are seen, you lose groundedness. And people feel that instability, even if they cannot name it. Over-talking weakens presence because it exposes fear of silence, fear of doubt, fear of being misunderstood. It shows that you are trying to close uncertainty instead of standing calmly within it. True strength is not loud. It does not rush to prove. It does not scramble to secure approval in real time. It answers and rests. When your words are complete, let them be complete. Let the silence stretch. Let the other person think. If discomfort arises, observe it without obeying it. That is Stoic defense. Not shutting down, not becoming cold, but refusing to let anxiety dictate your speech. And when you master that space, when you can hold 5 quiet seconds without flinching, something changes. You are no longer negotiating your presence. You are inhabiting it. Up to this point, we've been looking at silence through a defensive lens, understanding how over-talking exposes insecurity and how restraint restores inner stability. But there is an important shift we need to make before we move forward. This is not about learning how to impress powerful people. It is not about using silence as a status tactic. It is not about manipulating perception in rooms filled with high net worth individuals. That mindset is still external. It is still centered on control over others. Stoicism moves in the opposite direction. The question is not, how can I use silence to gain leverage? The real question is, can I remain steady when my nervous system wants to react? The Stoic aim is discipline, not dominance. Regulation, not performance. When silence becomes a training ground for self-command rather than a tool for social strategy, everything changes. You stop trying to win the room. You start mastering yourself. And mastery, in Stoic terms, is practical. It is trained. It is rehearsed. It is embodied. So now we move from theory to discipline, not to look stronger, not to appear higher status, but to become internally unshaken. Let's begin with the first step. Step 1. Measure the gap. The first discipline is simple, uncomfortable, but simple. After you finish answering a question, do nothing and silently count to 5. Not quickly, not mechanically, calmly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Most people do not even reach 1 full second before speaking again. The moment their sentence ends, their nervous system interprets the silence as exposure. And exposure feels like danger, so they rush to close it. This exercise is not about creating dramatic pauses to intimidate others. It is not about performing confidence. It is about retraining your internal response to stillness. When you count to 5, you are interrupting the automatic loop. Stimulus, anxiety, reaction. You are teaching your body that silence is not a threat. In Stoic terms, this is the practice of separating impression from action. As Epictetus advised, when an impression arises, say to it, "You are only an appearance." The discomfort you feel in silence is an appearance. It is not an order you must obey. At first, those 5 seconds will feel longer than they are. Your mind will generate stories. They're judging me. They expected more. I sound unprepared. Let those thoughts pass without responding to them verbally. The goal is not to suppress the anxiety. The goal is to outlast it. By the 4th or 5th second, something subtle happens. The urgency fades. The body settles. And you realize the silence did not harm you. No collapse occurred. No authority vanished. In fact, something else begins to form. Wait. When you allow your answer to stand without reinforcement, you communicate trust in your own words. You show that your statement does not need decoration to survive. That steadiness is felt more than it is heard. So, measure the gap. 5 seconds. Not to manufacture power, but to build nervous system resilience. Because the person who can remain still in silence is no longer speaking from fear. Step 2. Completion ritual. The second discipline is physical. Most people think confidence is mental, but much of anxiety lives in the body. Even after you finish speaking, your posture often stays slightly forward. Your hands continue moving. Your breath remains shallow, as if your system is still preparing to defend itself. So we introduce a completion ritual. When you finish your sentence, close the notebook, or gently place the pen down. Let your hands rest. Take one slow, quiet breath. Not exaggerated, not theatrical, subtle. This small physical act teaches your body something powerful. The statement is complete. Without a ritual, the body remains in open-loop mode, ready to add, justify, or correct. That restless energy leaks into micro-movements, facial tension, unnecessary follow-up phrases. And even if your words are strong, your physiology signals uncertainty. Stoicism is not abstract philosophy. It is embodied discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote about governing oneself, as if governing a city. Governance is not chaos. It is order. And order must be visible in conduct, not just thought. The completion ritual is how you install order into speech. When you close the notebook or settle your hands, you are communicating first to yourself that nothing more is required. You are not waiting to see if you should continue. You have chosen to stop. That choice restores authority internally before it is ever perceived externally. The gentle breath is important. Breath resets the nervous system. It shifts you from reactive mode into regulated presence. One slow inhale, one controlled exhale. No rush, no tension. Over time, this ritual creates a conditioned response. Sentence ends, body settles, mind quiets. The urge to overtalk weakens because the body no longer feels unfinished. You are teaching yourself that clarity does not need reinforcement. Completion does not need defense. And when your body learns that a sentence can end calmly, your presence becomes anchored, not rigid, not cold, but composed. Authority is often less about what you say and more about how decisively you stop. Step 3. Exposure practice. The third discipline is exposure. You cannot master silence in theory. You must practice it in real conversations, where stakes feel real and your nervous system is active. Start small. In a group meeting, answer a question clearly and stop. Let the room breathe. Resist the urge to polish your point. In conversations with friends, notice how often you jump in to fill pauses. Try allowing a few seconds to pass. Watch what happens. Most of the time, nothing collapses. The conversation simply continues more naturally than before. In interviews, this practice becomes even more powerful. Finish your answer. Let it land. Hold eye contact softly. Breathe. Allow the interviewer to think. Silence in that space often signals depth, not deficiency. The key is this: you are not practicing silence to win. You are not trying to dominate the room or create psychological pressure. That would only be another form of manipulation. You are observing yourself. What thoughts arise in the gap? Do you assume rejection? Do you feel exposed? Do you fear being misunderstood? This is where Stoicism becomes lived experience. Epictetus emphasized that philosophy is training for life, not intellectual decoration. Each pause becomes a moment to examine your impressions in real time. Silence exposes what you depend on. If you depend on constant feedback to feel secure, the pause will feel threatening. If you depend on filling space to feel competent, stillness will feel uncomfortable. That discomfort is the training ground. Do not fight it. Do not dramatize it. Simply notice it. Let the reaction rise and pass without turning it into speech. Over time, your nervous system recalibrates. Silence stops feeling like a cliff edge and starts feeling like solid ground. You realize you can remain present without performing. And something subtle shifts in how others respond. Not because you are using a tactic, but because steadiness is perceptible. Composure is perceptible. Self-trust is perceptible. Exposure practice transforms silence from an enemy into an ally. Not by forcing yourself to be quiet, but by learning that you are safe even when you are. Let's correct something important. The goal is not to look alpha. The goal is not to intimidate. The goal is not to manufacture status through calculated pauses. That mindset still depends on how others rank you. The Stoic aim is far quieter and far stronger. The goal is not to be triggered by empty space, not to let silence press on your ego, not to let a pause dictate your behavior. When there is a gap in conversation and you remain steady, you are not performing dominance. You are demonstrating self-command. When you resist the urge to over-explain, you are not withholding, you are choosing. When you stop asking for reassurance disguised as clarification, you are not becoming cold. You are becoming internally sourced. This is the difference. If your silence is a strategy to appear powerful, you are still dependent on appearance. But if your silence is the byproduct of inner regulation, then it is real. In Stoicism, strength is measured by freedom from compulsion. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself repeatedly that the only true authority is mastery over one's own mind. Not applause, not agreement, not status. So ask yourself, can you remain composed when nothing is happening? Can you tolerate being seen without rushing to explain yourself? Can you let your words stand without immediately reinforcing them? When you reach that point, something subtle shifts. You are no longer reacting to silence. You are inhabiting it. And when you stop reacting from fear, when you stop chasing confirmation, when you stop negotiating your presence in real time, authority stops being something you try to project. It becomes something others sense, not because you created it, but because you no longer needed to. The real transformation does not happen when you simply speak less. It happens when you no longer feel compelled to. This is the shift. At the beginning of this journey, silence feels like exposure. It feels like standing unarmed in front of judgment. You over-explain because you fear being misunderstood. You add details because you fear not being believed. You keep talking because you fear disappearing. But over time, through discipline, awareness, and exposure, you begin to notice something subtle. The fear starts to loosen. You are no longer afraid of being evaluated. You are no longer dependent on immediate reassurance. You are no longer trying to prove your worth in real time. That is rebirth in Stoic terms. Because Stoicism is not about controlling how you are perceived. It is about freeing yourself from the need to manage perception at all. When you stop negotiating your presence through excess words, you begin to inhabit it fully. You realize that your value is not created by volume. It is expressed through clarity. And clarity does not rush. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, "Be satisfied with even the smallest progress." He did not demand perfection. He did not demand immediate mastery. He understood that inner governance is built gradually. Holding 5 seconds of silence today may seem insignificant, but those 5 seconds represent something deeper. You endured discomfort without reacting. You felt the urge to add more and chose not to obey it. You experienced the flicker of insecurity and did not let it speak for you. That is progress, and progress compounds. The more you practice, the more your nervous system stops interpreting silence as threat. the more you realize that you can survive a pause, that you can be seen without scrambling to shape the image, that you can let your words stand without reinforcing them. Eventually, silence stops feeling like a void. It becomes space. Space for others to think. Space for your words to land. Space for your presence to settle. And in that space, something new forms. Self-trust. You trust that what you said was enough. You trust that if clarification is needed, it will be requested. You trust that your worth does not fluctuate based on micro-reactions in a room. This is not arrogance. It is internal alignment. When you are no longer trying to prove yourself, you become harder to destabilize. Not because you are emotionally numb, but because your center of gravity has moved inward. You are not speaking to secure approval. You are speaking because you have something to say. And when you finish, you rest. That rest is powerful, not loud, not aggressive, but grounded. Rebirth, in the Stoic sense, is always internal first. It is the moment when your peace stops being conditional, when your composure is not dependent on constant feedback, when your silence is not a tactic, but a reflection of steadiness. 5 seconds today may feel long, but those 5 seconds might be the foundation of a lifetime of calm authority. Not authority over others, authority over yourself. Silence is not a lack of confidence. Silence is not weakness. Disciplined silence is evidence of a mind that is no longer ruled by fear. Most people speak to relieve tension. They speak to secure approval. They speak to make sure they are not misunderstood. But when you begin to practice restraint, something deeper happens. You realize that you do not need to fill every space to remain valuable. You do not need to decorate every answer to remain competent. You do not need to chase reassurance to remain steady. This week, try something simple. When you answer a question, stop. No extra sentence. No unnecessary clarification. No subtle request for validation. Just stop. Let the words rest where they landed. And then observe what happens inside you. Does your chest tighten? Does your mind urge you to add more? Do you feel exposed? That is the training. As Epictetus reminded his students, we are disturbed not by events, but by our judgments about them. Silence is not attacking you. It is revealing you. It shows you where you still depend on external reactions for internal stability. And when you stay with that discomfort without reacting, you strengthen something invisible but powerful self-command. If this video helped you reflect on how you communicate, comment below. I control my silence. Not as a performance, not as a slogan, but as a reminder, because when you master silence, you are not just controlling your words. You are governing your impulses. You are regulating your fears. You are choosing rather than reacting. And in Stoicism, that is the only form of power that truly matters. Not power over the room, power over yourself.